Good afternoon, dear colleagues and friends, and welcome to the IDEA Seminar, the event that is hosted by the University of Massachusetts Amherst, and where we typically discuss learning technologies, approaches that can streamline learning experiences. My name is Slava Yurchenkov. I'm the manager of instructional design here at UMass Amherst, and I'm so excited to facilitate today's event about AI in education. We will try to answer the question how to reduce misuse and rethink teaching. We're going to have a wonderful panel discussion today with four great experts, and I actually would like to start with some time and provide them with an opportunity to introduce themselves, quickly share their backgrounds, and also tell us why they're excited to join today's event. And I'd like to start with Michelle Miller.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. It's great to be here. So I'm Dr. Michelle Miller. My background is that I write and I speak and I do research on applying psychological science and cognitive science, cognitive psychology, to higher education pedagogy, and especially how that intersects with technology. So it's been a busy couple of years, as you might imagine. But also, I'm excited to be here because besides that sort of more theoretical work, I teach every day in bread and butter courses in Introduction to Psychology and other very foundational courses at a large public state university in the United States. So both online, face to face. And so those are the issues that both are really relevant to me and I love to share.
Thank you, Michelle. Kristen, you're going to be the next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kirsten Helmer. I'm a senior lecturer here at UMass Amherst and work with a Center for Teaching and Learning. So I'm a faculty consultant and educational developer. And I engage with faculty all the time around the issue of AI, right? I mean, it's been a constant topic. We're getting so many consultations. There's a lot of anxieties out there, but also a lot of excitement. And I actually became interested in generative AI right away when ChatGPT emerged. And I was like, wow, this sounds like it's really gonna kind of push us to think about what education means, what teaching and learning mean. And so I have done a lot of stuff around AI since then. So glad to be here with you today.
Thank you so much. Kemi Bean, you're going to be the next.
Excellent. I'm the outlier here. I'm not from higher ed. I'm Cami Bean. I work in the learning and development space on the corporate education side. So I have been in digital learning since the last century, back when we delivered corporate training on CD-ROMs. Have seen a lot of change in that time. I take the output of higher ed systems. Those are the employees, the future employees of America and other countries, right, coming into the workplace. So it's been very transformative seeing what's happening with AI over the last couple of years. I also have three emerging adults, so I bring the perspective of a parent to this conversation, one of whom is a senior at UMass Amherst. So very connected to this community and very honored to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for trusting UMass Amherst. And we have Sean Wandrei.
Last but not least, thanks, Slava. I teach in the accounting department. I'm a senior lecturer here at UMass Amherst. I'm in the Eisenberg School of Management. I primarily teach in tax, so I worked in public accounting prior to coming to UMass. I have a CPA, so still in touch with the public accounting firms. They are using AI. They expect their hires that they hire a lot of our students to have knowledge in AI. So trying to juggle teaching tax concepts with AI, at least getting the students exposed to it. So I have interest in that, helping the students out, and for my own use of AI to help the students with materials teaching class. So excited to be here to hear from others and learn some things as well. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Well, I know that it takes some time for our participants to connect, so feel free to join our YouTube chat and also share where you're coming guys from, why you're here. I know that we have more than 500 registrations for this event, and it will be great to see why you're here, what are you excited about. Well, before we start our panel discussion, I'd like to briefly introduce the state of AI. I don't want to cheer AI, don't want to scare, but we definitely want to discuss this before we have our questions. As you all know, we are facing a situation where we have to rethink and change our education systems, specifically schools and universities, because no one was truly prepared for AI to become a full-fledged participant in the learning process. It is clear that some countries restrict the use of technologies and AI in the learning process. Some countries actually trying to integrate AI not only in the learning process but also in the process of evaluation and assessment. What approach is correct is for each to decide, but I think we are bound to follow the second path, and it's just time to adapt and to learn how to use AI critically. On this slide, you see that AI has been evolving from just narrow applications toward general AI, and we're now moving towards the superintelligence AI. Experts predict that we will achieve general AI in the next 5 years, and this superintelligence thing is going to happen around 2035, 2040, but this will change the way how we live, work, and learn. Just a few years ago, as you noticed, AI was able to start generating text and sounds. Today, the biggest trend is media production with videos. There was a first movie shot with just a smartphone, and AI was used to improve productions to the level that we cannot see and tell the difference. And it's just a matter of time that soon we're gonna see fully AI integrated movies. Sounds scary, but maybe it sounds fun, right? What happens in education? We clearly see that AI is being integrated in the education system. AI is not just used to create content, and it is not used just to cheat, but also we clearly see that companies are trying to implement a lot of tools that either can set goals and plan learning paths for students, they can guide and support them, or they can also provide them with some feedback based on the data, how to improve their learning process. And on this slide, you see some companies that offer different AI solutions. We also were lucky enough to ask you, our participants, to share your current view on AI in teaching and learning. And actually, the numbers are pretty impressive, because we can see that 45% of you see AI as a valuable tool that can enhance education. 37% believe that AI has potential, but they are cautious about its impact, and only 7% are really skeptical or concerned about AI in education, which is understandable, right? That's why we're here, that's why we're discussing this topic, how to use AI critically. We also asked our participants to share the strategies of how they possibly be using AI in teaching. So 68% mentioned that they'd like to use AI, or they're using AI to ensure course objectives, content, and assessments are well aligned. 64% mentioned that they would like to use AI to improve accessibility, meaning they want to provide captions, hidden structures, alt text, and summaries. 67% want to use AI to generate AI assistant questions for assessments to promote critical thinking and reflection. Which brings me to the next slide about critical thinking. It is clear that the cost of knowledge is decreasing, mainly because it's easy to access information through AI and online courses, but skills are what really matter now. So we as educators really need to teach students how to gather, understand, and use data to make smart decisions, how to communicate effectively, how to reason critically. And these are actually the core skills based on the World Economic Forum report that was published in 2025. As you can clearly see here, critical and system thinking is a core thing. And of course, AI can support us. Of course, AI can save time on finding information or generating new ideas. But if we rely too much on AI, it can weaken critical skills and our thinking skills. And I actually saw some great quotes on LinkedIn and several reports that AI will not make us dumber, but the way we use AI might, right? So that is why we're here to discuss how can educators use AI responsibly, how we can teach students to use AI critically, how to use AI to support course design in ways that deepen learning rather than just streamline content, how to create assessments that will help students to think critically, and how can we move from fear or skepticism toward confident, values-driven use of AI tools. So these are the core questions for our event today, and thank you so much for sending so many questions before this seminar today. We were lucky enough to include most of them to our scenario. If you still think that you want to ask questions during the seminar, feel free to do so in YouTube forum. We'll have some time today during the event, and I cannot promise that we will be able to pick all the questions and answer all the questions from the chat, but I will pick a few and we will definitely cover them with our experts. I think we're ready to start our panel discussion, and I have the first question. Many faculty view AI as a potential threat to academic integrity and to students' development of essential skills. How can educators use AI responsibly to enhance learning without lowering academic standards? Kristen, I'd like to start with you.
Yeah, great question, Slava. Thank you so much for asking it. I mean, first, I want to say that it's really important to acknowledge that these concerns are absolutely valid, right? We are actually seeing that a lot of students without guidance are turning to AI to use it in not very effective ways or to circumvent learning, right? Which really begs the question, so what do we need to do as educators to actually guide our students? But I wanted to actually share my screen and show you something that I like to share with faculty when they ask me this question. And it's about, we often talk about generative AI as a tool, right? And as I was thinking about it, it occurred to me that actually it is way more than a tool, right? It really reshapes our environments and creates these new ecosystems. And I was thinking in terms of just think back to the days when we didn't have cars. So what you see on the screen is like an image from New York City around the 1900s. And it looks completely different from the way New York City looks nowadays with all of these roadways. So what cars actually did was it didn't just allow us to get from point A to point B, but it really redefined our relationship to time and space. It actually really redefined our environments. And I think that is what we're seeing with AI. So questions that I like to ask faculty are like, what new relationships and structures or norms are really emerging right now? What do you want to hold on to? What do you think needs to be rethought? And so in my work, I really looked at a critical AI literacy. Specifically, I spent a whole semester on researching AI literacy frameworks. And I just wanted to share two of those, and I'm going to very quickly just click through my slides. To two of these literacy frameworks that I think are really important. So one is from the Modern Language Association. They had a joint task force and they identified some core principles for AI literacy, really emphasizing that we need to be collaborative, that it needs to be critical engagement, and so neither for nor against AI, but thoughtfully evaluative and developmental. So that we build actually on existing literacies. I think, Slava, you mentioned information literacy. So we're not, and then there's data literacy. So we're not starting from scratch. We're not trying to replace these, but actually expanding those, right? And what they did is actually look at different stakeholders in education, what I find so important about this specific framework. And they identified certain AI literacy dimensions for educators. They have a student guide to AI literacy that we can share with students. So responding to, like what can we do not to lower standards? We can actively engage our students and teach them AI literacy. We really need to step into that. And what many of these AI literacy frameworks actually share is that they don't just focus on what some call like functional AI literacy, which would be just, understanding how AI works and being able to use different AI tools, identify maybe, which AI platform to use or app to use for which specific task. But the best frameworks actually center this critical component, right? Where we really engage students with evaluating the AI output, like the relevance, the usefulness, the accuracy. And what I find important about the MLA one is this metacognitive dimension that they added. So to really ask our students to monitor their own learning while they are using different Gen AI tools or platforms or applications, right? And so to round out my initial thoughts, I was thinking in terms of like 4 different things that I would suggest that actually can raise our academic standards. So I would like to flip it from, lowering academic standards actually to raising them. But the first step must be that we as educators need to develop our own AI literacy, which means we do have to lean into experimenting with AI ourselves, right? Because otherwise, we don't really know how we can support our students. And then the second important one is to really lead with your learning outcomes, being very intentional about your learning outcomes. So going back to your course goals, the learning outcomes, which ones really matter right now, which knowledge and skills must students develop without AI maybe, where might AI actually enhance student learning? And then what new AI-related competencies and skills do we want to add to our learning objectives, right? And then the third is to create structured and scaffolded opportunities for students to use AI. So don't just allow it incidentally, but really design it intentionally. So I was thinking in terms of when you want to do group work with your students, right? If you don't design for group work, then most likely it will kind of fail or students might not be able to perform their best work, right? And it's the same with AI. We need to intentionally design for that. We need to scaffold for it, right? We need to guide students. We need to think in terms of what learning experiences can we design that do this scaffolding, that do this guidance, and also where in the learning process does it make sense for students to use AI? So when and where? And what that means for me is also really this shift from often we are very product focused in education when we assess student learning, right? It's like an exam or a final essay or final project or whatnot, and we don't assess the whole process. And I think AI really pushes us towards this more process focused way of thinking of assessment, right? And how we guide students through a learning process. And then the fourth one really is to make AI interactions visible. So to bring it out and to actually integrate, for example, student and AI chat logs as real artifacts into the assessment process, right? So I think with that, we can really raise our standards. So actually, as I thought about this question, it's like we need to demand more of our students. Or actually, what we will most likely, if we do this effectively, is students will have to do more critical thinking and they will have to do harder work with AI if we guide them appropriately and scaffold their learning appropriately.
That is so great. Thank you so much, Kristen. I really enjoyed what you just mentioned about this this is like a framework for instructors. And I like that we definitely have to make sure that instructors develop their own AI literacy. They have to try, right? Because if you don't know what AI can do, people can make assumptions, and with everything that they try, they can also create a strategy on how to use AI. I like the way how you also suggested to go back and check your learning outcomes. You actually can ask AI to review your course objectives, right? And maybe brainstorm with AI activities and how to brainstorm examples and how to align them with the learning objectives. So thank you so much. Really great solutions. If anyone else want to jump into this question, feel free to do so. All right. Well, it looks like no one is ready. Sure. Well, we just discussed the faculty perspective, but how about students? How can we help students strike a balance between using Gen AI effectively and preserving their own critical thinking and problem-solving abilities? Sean, how about we start with you?
All right, thanks. So as both you, Slava, and Kirsten said, it starts with having the faculty, us as instructors, have to have an understanding of how to use AI, how to get out of it, because we want to make sure the students are going to be able to use it properly, critically evaluate the outcomes, and use it for problem solving. So one of the things, and I think a lot of people here now, I mean, we're not burying our heads in the sand about AI. It's here. It's used. The firms are using it. They expect, like I said, our students to use it. So a lot is we got to. So every semester I do. Lately, I've done an informal survey, like how are students using it. And a lot of it seems it's pretty informal. They're using it to help them clarify maybe a complex topic, get some understanding outside the classroom, maybe start a paper, but doesn't seem like, and this may change as students are using it earlier and they start to get more of a feel for it, but there's hasn't been really any formal way of using um, Gen AI. So it starts with like, what exactly is it? How can we use it? And then gets into a prompting class so the students can generate that prompt that will get them a good outcome. But the key here is once they get the outcome, you can't just blindly trust what they've given you. So I have some assignments we'll talk a little bit later, but part of it is evaluating that research or evaluating that outcome, I should say. And I think in a way, by them having to think, is this true? It gives them a deeper understanding of the material because they're going to have to kind of do some of their own research on the side afterwards to see, is this information, is this output correct? So right there starts to build some of the critical thinking, not just trusting the information blindly. Um, and then just grabbing those outputs and then solving the outcomes. So I think we want to lead or not lead, but show the students because this is new to them too. I mean, the technology has been around like 3 years in full effect, but we want to make sure that they have a full understanding of, all right, this is how we are going to use it properly. Here's how we're going to prompt it. And then the outcomes, we need to take a look at them critically and basically confirm, because if you're passing that off as your own work, or if you're in a situation where you're maybe not in a classroom setting, you're passing off the output as yours, you want to make sure that it's correct. And to what we were talking earlier before we got on, that there's not a chat GPT. Do you want me to do any other work for you so you have so you know, so that it shows that it is your final work um, that you have submitted.
Thank you so much. Kemi, you mentioned at the beginning when you were introducing yourself that as a parent, right, you're thinking about your kids entering the workforce, but corporates, they expect students to use AI and different technologies, right? So what's your opinion, how to ensure that students are ready for being they're ready for the workforce, being to work in a corporate setting, and at the same time they have these critical skills, they know how to think, how to communicate effectively, because what might happen is that if institutions restrict using technologies, then the companies will blame institutions that students are not ready for this 21st
Yeah.
century job.
Well, first off, I'll say corporations, the businesses out there have not figured out how to use AI in their businesses yet, right? Like we're at this perfect storm moment where it's chaos out here on the corporate side. Everyone's trying to figure out how to incorporate AI. Um, there's this imperative that we have to include AI in what we're doing. There's a lot of corporate governance and standards that means many companies can't put it into place yet. It's a bit of chaos. I think there's a lot of people, maybe myself included, maybe it's my age, but like, can I just go to sleep for 3 years and wake up once this is all settled down a little bit, right? Like we're all kind of feeling that way. Um, so we're building the plane as we're flying it with AI right now. So that's the reality. The students that you all are educating at UMass and other higher ed institutions are about to enter this workforce. Um, as a parent, I definitely have, I think there's an interesting time with these kids who are trying to get on the plane right now or not. So I have a senior at UMass. I have a sophomore at another one of the five colleges in the UMass consortium, and I have a high school senior. Um, None of them want to use AI. They are totally resistant. My senior at UMass, nope, I don't want to use AI. I want to use my own brain. I'm really proud of him for that pushback. Like for him, that's why I'm here. I'm at college to increase my noggin, my skills. My daughters are very anti-AI for all of the environmental reasons. They also, when they came online with AI, one of my daughters was a high school freshman. It was all fear-based. The teachers were telling them not to use it. You were cheating. She got accused of cheating. She did not. Like, she doesn't want to touch it. And it's interesting. I talked to a lot of people out in the world, and it's not just my three children. There are a lot of kids who are very resistant to AI right now. So that's a reality for universities. These kids are coming in. They're not AI natives. And I think we also have to consider this is a generation that grew up with smartphones in their hands, iPads in their hands, and now they're being told that it screwed them up. And we're seeing my daughter's high school, they're taking phones away, they're getting locked in pouches now. They've been told this technology has messed them up. And now you're throwing AI into the mix. So I think, like, from the human angle for these kids, it's a really complicated time right now. And as I think about, as I'm hearing you all talk, I don't know, UMass, like have an intro seminar for all freshmen have to take where you're going through all of these basics because those kids are not getting that right now. Maybe the kids who are another 10 years behind them will grow up as true AI natives and won't have this period of tension. But I think the kids right now who are emerging into higher ed and then coming into the workforce, they're living in this moment. They don't want to use AI at all. And I'm curious, like, what are you all seeing from, in the higher ed standpoint? Michelle, you're nodding your head. What are you seeing?
Oh, absolutely. And I've taught this seminar called Technology, Mind, and Brain since 2011. It was a class that I won the little sort of almost contest to teach your dream class, and that's what I put together. And so, yeah, I'm definitely picking up on that continuity that you're seeing with other earlier technologies, and in some of the writing. And I'm not the first to observe this in my writing, but people say this goes all the way back to radio. You want to read some stuff that's like, oh, these kids are going to be these different humans because, and the family's going to break down because there's this stuff piping in. It's like partly true, and then you can partly really spot the over the top stuff. So yeah, the time after time in that seminar, I've really gotten to see, like you have with your own kids, the real spectrum of attitudes, beliefs, and skills around technologies. And when I started that, it was all around smartphones. My students were just starting to observe, like, Dr. Miller, do you know some people take their phones to bed with them? You're not going to believe it. And we had students for several years. They're like, I don't want a smartphone. It weirds me out, or I have my reasons. So yeah, it's a good reminder to say, let's not just assume AI and everything because kids want it. I mean, this is one one thing. Again, smartphones, learning management systems, you name any technology. And yeah, we need to leave some space for that. And that's one of the recommendations I made really early on. I don't know how much we're going to be able to keep to this, and there's definitely some exceptions that make sense. But I put in almost conscientious objector. Well, kind of options so that students are not pressed or
Mm,
forced to interact with AI. So yes,
I like that.
absolutely. I see that continuity, and you raise some really interesting contexts. And with social media, we saw it too. I mean, our students were going on it, and then some people started saying, "Well, let's research it. Oh, let's all put everything on Facebook because the kids are all there." And then meantime, some students are saying, I don't want to be a part of that.
Mm.
So I think that we've learned a lot perhaps from that, or we should learn from that.
Well, yeah, have we? And I think just to expand a little bit too, I feel like we're living very much in a moment of paradox right now, where even us adults in the room, right? I have a lot of anxiety about AI and what it's going to do to the world. You know, my kids, as I said, they don't trust any AI generated content. If your image looks like it's AI, they don't want to have anything to do with that product. Right? There's a lot of fear about it's going to take jobs away from people. There's a lot of real concern over that and what it's doing in the workforce. So that's all true. I have fear of it. And the other hand, it's like, but it's going to do some really awesome things, right? Like it's going to really change the world and hopefully some amazing ways. So there's this, both things can be true. I try to encourage my kids. It's important to understand how these tools work and how to use them for good. Um, so we need to push forward responsibly, but it's a moment. Kirsten, yeah, you're
Yeah.
doing this. How are you doing this?
Well, that's why I brought up, I think, the AI literacy frameworks, right? I do think it's really helpful to have like a structured approach to think about these multiple dimensions that we need to consider when we think about AI at the same time as we think about where people are on this continuum, right? From like complete resistance to complete embracing and everything in between. And I really liked how you just said we need to like address both, right? I mean, like for me too, it needs to be a both end. I do think it's really important that we don't just resist AI in the way of we're just not going to engage with it because it's there, right? And we need to make informed decisions and we need to learn about it so that we can make informed decisions. And I fear if we just remain in that fearful emotional state of I'm not going to do it, that some of the risk will actually manifest because we cannot evaluate AI if we don't engage with it, right? So that's what I mean with the both end. And the other thing that came up for me as you were talking was actually at the same time, like we need to allow our students and everybody really to identify their values. I think we are really at a moment in time where we are being asked to think deeply about the values that inform who we are, who we want to be, whether that is related to teaching, learning, just being in the world, right? And what really matters to us. And that needs to inform also how we approach this. And we need to make that space, like you said, for being humans, right? Like when your kids say, "Oh, I don't want to spend my brain energy on AI." On the other hand, I would argue we could like it's also actually really demanding, it demands new ways of thinking and engaging your brain actually because of AI, right? Like when I think about intro courses, a lot of intro courses still like have exams where students are assessed then based on what they can remember, right? Like memory-based learning, so to say. I don't think that's going to work anymore. That's what I meant initially with actually, I think critical thinking will be elevated because we really need that critical thinking right now more than ever. And we really need to think about what critical thinking actually means in the age of AI, right? Is that still the same critical thinking we used to think about? Or like how has AI even changed how we think about critical thinking? I think metacognition is one thing that is actually elevated, right? All of us, we really need to think about, we need to monitor our own thinking and learning and whatnot while we use these tools. So things that have been there before, but maybe more to the margins, I think are taking more center stage now, actually.
I thank you so much. Really great points, Kemi. I think when you mentioned that your kids don't trust AI, they don't want to use it. I think it's a impressive exception from my point of view, because I read some comments from our participants, and some of the comments state that at our university we're seeing students use it, but not necessarily for the right reasons. Or there is Riza who ran a survey, and they asked, how would you describe your current academic use of AI? And only 35 respondents out of 110 select that they are against of AI usage. Means that students are using AI, right? And I just want to share one of my stories. When I was a student here at UMass, especially as the international student, I'm so sometimes jealous that we haven't had this technology when I was a student here in 2016. The story is that I was asked to read the article, like a 15-page article on the topic, and then we had to create the essay and reflect on the article, what we thought about that. And even though I consider that I understand English and I had to pass this TOEFL test before being admitted to UMass, I spent the entire day, I think I read this article for more than 5 times, and I haven't had a clue like what was the article about, especially academic articles. So I decided to email my professor. I said, hey, here's the thing, I just I read this article for more than 5 times, still have no idea like where to start. Can you at least help me with some questions so that I can start thinking about that in a different way, right? Trying to connect these questions with the article. I received the response from my professor, like, you probably need to read this article one more time. So I think this is where I, as a student, will consider using AI, like, hey, I don't want you to create an essay for me to reflect on this paper, but what if you ask me some questions about where to start, what like things I need to focus on? And this is the appropriate way of using AI. And as faculty, faculty can actually, that's the way we are talking about AI statements in syllabus with some examples, how you can use AI, what is the appropriate way of using AI, what is not the appropriate way of using AI. Because right now it's not simply enough just to say you're restricted of using AI because it's important to develop your critical skills. But if you provide some samples on this is the right approach of using AI, or if you have additional questions you want to discuss this with me, feel free to email me and we can discuss if you want to use AI. So I think this is how we can teach our students to feel more comfortable with using AI. And Kemi, as you mentioned previously, we are in this messy period now that some students are not ready, but in 5 to 10 years students will be using AI. All of them will be using AI, especially at schools, and they will then go to UMass or other institution with some experience, right? And the prompt engineering experience will be even better than it is now. And if we can notice the AI generated images or text now, in a few years with this prompt engineering skill, it might be absolutely impossible to see the difference. So it's our responsibility, right, to teach students.
Absolutely. But in 5, 10 years, you're also going to have a lot of agentic AI that's going to do it all for them and finish the LMS and do the assignments for them, right? So I do think the nature of education has to change to meet that moment so that not that they're cheating, but however they're using these tools, it's on you educators to figure that out, guys. How
And
do we
it
help people rise
actually
with it?
And it actually happens now. I know that OpenAI recently introduced the web browser that can easily scan the quizzes in Canvas and select those correct quiz options. So that is why I think it is important to describe it in the policy in your syllabus that this is not the appropriate way. And if faculty finds out this is academic integrity. This is the discussion that they need to have between students on how to avoid using AI inappropriately. I have another question for Michelle. Michelle, that is actually a question from one of our participants who submitted the question before attending the seminar. Many students with weaker writing skills rely on AI to do the work for them. How can educators support the students so that they use AI responsibly while still developing essential writing and critical thinking skills?
Right. So that it just goes to the heart of what for many of us was at least the first immediate reaction, and I know it was mine. And so it's like, oh no, AI can answer my multiple choice questions and generate something passable. I think that it's going to be really recognizable, especially to folks like Kirsten here today, who are from the instructional design side, that we really do start to break down our assignments. I mean, when we talk about being product focused, that's very kind of, hypothetical, and it's accurate to say that of like, but what does that mean? It means that I ask you to put, a largely completed document in my hand written for one person at the end of the semester. And so for years we've been talking about alternatives to this. And so now it's like no longer this is a nice thing for the really, pedagogically forward among us. It's like, no, everybody needs to start doing this. And the good news is we have already a head start in instructional design to say, what does that look like? So, and I'll say this is personal to me too. So, after asking for years to teach this one course in my department, I begged for this course, writing in psychology, since I've really gotten into nonfiction writing. I'm like, yeah, this is my thing. And they finally said yes. And they finally said, it's going to be fully online. I'm like, this is great. I love to teach online. And this was in fall of 2023. So you can imagine kind of what was crossing my mind around in July of 2023. So I had to look at this. And I'm not saying that I have, a set of perfect alternatives, but this class has been radically refocused from where it used to be of just like, okay, this is all about APA format and it's points off for every time you put a comma in the wrong place or your margin is in this or margin is in that, and aligns with what I've observed for years anyway, pre-AI, which is that the problem is not that students can't, they have prepositions that are all written wrong or something like that. And citation style, it's important, but you can learn that. The real issue is getting students to read, synthesize, and make a coherent argument in their paper. It's all about the structure. So in this course, they don't draft a word until we have gone through all the mechanics of how do you find research? How do you judge the research? Did you read the research? Give me a copy of the article so I know that at least you have them. And we are just incrementally working up they just turned in their outlines last week, got some feedback on that, and they're drafting half of their draft this time. So at this point, can I absolutely say that nobody ever plugged in their outline and said, generate some text? I don't think I will be able to do that. But I think I've set them up as well as possible to, not just pay lip service to, oh, good writing is all about pre-writing. It's not about the product. We actually structure the course that way. And I did a little bit at the beginning too. Again, not going to say that we can make an airtight case that this worked exactly, but I think is very helpful right from the beginning of the course too. We talked about student goals, what they wanted out of this. They don't have a, post once, reply to two discussion board throughout, but we did one introduction to each other. And I also asked them, like, what writing do you like to read? Is there a book, a series of books, or even a screenwriter or something like that who you follow? And just kind of trying to subtly build their identity as a writer. So I think that there's some combinations here, but part of it really does come down to that bedrock instructional design principle, which again we've been pushing for a long time, which is this needs to be an iterative process. And I guess last of all, something that I've advocated, pre-AI, but now louder than ever, is that we have to look at a lot of more flexibility in our traditional policies and approaches. And this may not seem like an AI thing to a lot of teachers out there, but I think it is an AI thing. When does cheating and just ask AI to make it up? I mean, even before this, we knew it. Paper mills, the Chags of the world, I'm just going to say. It thrives on inflexible deadlines. It's 25 minutes, it's due in 25 minutes. The professor doesn't take any late work. It's 10% per day. I have thrown all that out. There are a few hard and fast deadlines in my courses, but if I, my usual talking point is take the time you need to do your best work. And by and large, students do not abuse this. They don't just wait until the very last week any more than any of them ever did. But that too, I think, is a long overdue development, and one that will very much help us forestall some of this inappropriate use of AI.
Thank you so much. Kristen, it looks like you're
Yeah,
going
can
to add
I
something.
build on that? I think what you just shared, Michelle, really points to how we need to communicate to our students that we actually value struggle and not a polished product, right? Going back to not being so focused on the product. Because if we just assess that, students will turn to AI because it's just so easy, right? And so we need to increase the value for the struggle. And I think we also need to bring students into the conversation. One thing I really worry about is that in all of these conversations, in the spaces that I inhibit when I talk about AI, the student voices are really, really absent, I have to say, right? Like, we talk about it, and I really wish that we would bring in the students and hear their concerns, like what you shared, Cami, right? Like, and take that seriously. And how can we respond to that? And going back to AI literacy, so the framework from MLA that I shared earlier with you, integrity is one of the dimensions, actually, right? So it means, like, when I think about it, we used to just say we had a very short academic integrity statement, right? And that was it. And pretty much everybody understood what that meant. I mean, there were some gray areas, but not as many. And I think even that shows a new dimension of thinking, actually, that we demand of our students, because it's hard. It's like, and it will get increasingly harder as these AI things get integrated into everything that we use, right? The lines get so blurry where at some point, I remember early on where people said, well, ask students to like have in a different color what AI generated. Now, I have written a whole report with AI, like iteratively. I can't even say through how many different processes I went with. I was using Claude. And I realized at the end in my AI acknowledgement statement, I cannot say which part of this writing is AI and which part of the writing is me. It became so entangled, right? And so I had to express that actually in my AI acknowledgement statement, because it was like, I cannot tell you. The ideas are mine, but I also had significant collaboration with AI, to put it all together. And I think these are the conversations we need to have with our students.
Thank you so much. I also think that that will be my assumption, but the reason some students prefer to use AI, to ask AI to complete a task, is maybe because their fear of bad grades, right? And they think that this way they will impress faculty, but in reality they will not. They will actually make them feel like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this, right? Another way how to make students to communicate with each other and receive feedback, and instead of just asking AI to analyze their writing and ask for feedback, what needs to be improved. Let's say for some reason faculty is not being ready to provide feedback now. It's peer-to-peer learning, right? They can share their works, and each can provide comments on what needs to be improved. Then yes, they can ask AI to provide some analysis what needs to be improved. But I think that's the way how we can, one, help students to develop soft skills like communication skills, because they, once they finish universities, they will start talking to other colleagues at work, right? That's the project-based work. They need to talk. They will not work solely with AI. They will use AI as a tool, but they will need to communicate with other people. So that's one of the additional ways how to integrate peer-to-peer learning in the learning process. Kirsten, I have last question from this section. Research is still mixed on whether AI helps or harms student learning. But from your perspective as faculty consultant, what have you been hearing about how AI is affecting teaching and learning?
Well, like I said earlier, I think there's a lot of anxieties, I think, on both sides, right? Where students, remember that students are not AI experts. None of us are really AI experts, right? Cami, what you said, we're jumping on this plane that is being built as as it's in the air. And so I think it's really hard to say where we are. Again, I think we need a lot more research actually to find out where we are and we might be going. I do think a trend that worries me is when we go back to assessment methods that we had kind of abandoned, right? Because they actually didn't work that well, and our research proved that. Let's say Blue Book exams, right? We abandoned those for a reason, and actually what I'm hearing now is that in a lot of courses, instructors are going back to that, right? And I think we need to acknowledge that this places an additional burden actually on our students, because we must remember that these are students, some of them maybe have never taken notes by hand. Maybe they have never really written a longer thing by hand, never ever in their life. And now all of a sudden, we are requiring them to produce knowledge in a high stress situation by hand, right? So that is something that worries me. On the other hand, I also want to acknowledge that faculty instructors are also not AI experts, and we have come out of a pandemic where we had to shift a lot of things, right? And now we have AI, and all of a sudden it's now you need to teach with AI, which means we need to develop our own AI literacy first, but nobody gives us the time for that, right? I mean, and I think that's a real problem. There's a real overburdening actually of educators, and we need to acknowledge that, right? And that is something that I'm also hearing.
Let's bring some instructional design to our conversation, actually. And Kemi, let me start with you. Even though you are on more like on the corporate side, but still, like when you develop courses for adults, students at UMass, they're also adults, right? So we can integrate some instructional design expertise to higher education as well. How can AI support course design in ways that deepen learning rather than just streamline content, especially in foundational courses where students are still building core knowledge but already turn into AI for help with their assignments?
That's a big question. I mean, first I want to say on the corporate side of things, what matters to corporations these days are skills. What are the skills that people have that they can translate into the job force? And I'm sure Sean, like you're in the business school, like that's probably, accounting, that's what you're doing is skill building. And I would say to Kirsten and Michelle, like we don't care on this side. Like I've never looked at anyone's GPA when you're hiring someone, and students out there, like that's going to matter way less than you think. But really putting that focus on, and this does tap into instructional design because it's about the motivation that you're giving people, is help them understand what are the skills that they're building that they're going to be able to carry forward. Like that's so foundational and formative. What we're struggling with on the corporate side right now with L&D and a lot of, the challenge that corporations have with developing content at scale, right? You might be like some of my clients, I work with big clients. They've got hundreds of thousands of employees and they're trying to create one e-learning program that meets the needs of everyone, or at scale. So AI, pulling AI into that, and right now the plane is getting built as we're flying it. It's you can use AI in two ways. I mean, there's more than two ways, but you can use it to create more content more quickly. And that's where we start to see the rise of the AI slop. Somebody was talking about, I think Slava, you showed the statistic about how, what is it, 54% of content now, it might be higher, that's on the internet now is created by AI, right? So people are talking about how the internet is dead. The more content that gets created with AI, the less we're going to start trusting it, I think. Or it starts to lose its humanity. And this is where my kids are going, I don't even want to look at that image. That's AI generated. So we can use AI to create more content more quickly, or we can really rethink what are the experiences that we're designing and how are we using AI to create something totally new that we haven't even thought of. So, do I know what all of those things are yet? No. But the things that we're experimenting with a lot are how can you use, AI to have conversations and practice, right? That's what skill building is all about. So can we be creating conversation agents or scenarios where I'm now talking to an irate customer and actually have to respond and I'm building that skill and there's a rubric on the back end that's evaluating how I'm doing and giving me feedback and personalizing the learning experience. So this is all the kind of more forward thinking stuff that's happening on the corporate side, because ultimately what we need to do is build the skills of people. And it's also doubling down. We've been talking a lot about the human skills. It's doubling down on that, right? Collaboration, creative thinking, curiosity, creativity, supporting all of that through the process. And I'm really eager actually to hear from Sean because you're doing this in the classroom, right? How are you
That's
doing
actually,
this? What are you
yeah.
doing?
So, I've been trying to figure out ways, obviously new to all of us, ways that I can use it to create materials for the students to help them learn the material, to save me some time, but primarily to help the students learn the material better and give them more resources. So what I've done, and I'm going to share the screen here, is I've created within ChatGPT, it's called New Projects. And what it has allowed me to do is basically upgrade my teaching materials. So I have, and I'll get into how I created this new project and what exactly it is, but it's basically a teaching assistant that I'm able to use and take feedback from the students. Every semester we get surveys of what we did well, what we can improve on. So I'm able to use that and summarize it and have the teaching assistant create assignments that can meet the students' needs so they can help them learn the material better or fill in those gaps that I am not doing, according to them, a great job on. So providing them with additional material. So I'm also have used it. I was bringing into one of my classes just a week about generative AI, like how it's this, some of the firms are using it, and we started baby steps. What is Gen AI? Prompting techniques. So creating materials for them and then creating class settings. One of the ideas that I received was skeletal notes, chapter summaries. So I had the Gen AI create those, build discussion questions, and bring those explanations because it's tax is a complex topic. Try to bring it down to student level teaching. So I took a seminar through Harvard Business Impact. Dan Levy at Harvard was the lead. And we have these instructions for a new project. A new project, and I'll show you in ChatGPT in a second, is an option that ChatGPT provides that you can give it instructions. So I've told this teaching assistant, like my teaching assistant, here is the course I'm teaching, here is the intended target. What should I emphasize? And this is what do I emphasize? What's my teaching style? How do I want to get across to the students? The material this is the way I would do it. And then I give the teaching instruction or the teaching assistant instructions, course design, support, materials, evaluations. And then I uploaded my syllabus, those course evaluations, um, and documents. So within the IRS, there's publications about tax, some tax publications, um, chapter summaries, and I uploaded all those to this project. And then within that project now, I started using some prompts to generate materials. And the good thing about the teaching project or the projects is I already gave it the instructions. I don't have to necessarily give it a good prompt every time because it knows the context of who I am, what I'm looking for. So I can just kind of jump in and say, here's what I want you to do. And I have a couple of examples of some prompts. And on that second prompt, we can go into ChatGPT and see what it gave me. But one of the things I wanted to do, and a colleague in Eisenberg told me about this, is at the end of the class, there may be questions that they didn't have, they couldn't, or that they couldn't ask or didn't want to ask in class. So I have a QR code at the end that they can scan, and that'll bring them into a Google Doc, and then they can say, "Hey, I didn't understand this question today. Um, can you help me with it?" So the goal, I went into this teaching assistant. I said, "Hey, create the QR code. I want to do an end of class survey." And it basically, and I walked through it a couple of times, and it created the Google Doc for me, and then it created the QR code. So now the student at the end of the class, if they don't understand something, they can just take a QR code and ask their question. And then my goal was to take that student's question and just basically bring it into the teaching assistant and have the teaching assistant answer that question. And then I would do a review of it to make sure it was correct, make sure the output was correct, and then kind of give it. So I thought that was a good touch for the students, and wasn't a heavy lift for myself. The one that I used a lot was, and this is the second prompt here, is here are my insertees on campus based on our student evaluations. I uploaded them and like, tell me what I've done well, tell me what I can work on, and then give me some materials. And these prompts are just a starting point, and I start having a conversation with the TA, and we'll look at that one in a second to see what it said. And then the new one, like I talked about, I brought Gen AI into the class and I uploaded some files and I said the students are going to work on these assignments. So the way I teach class is I like to have some like skeletal notes before we get into class. Like, here's what we should look for. Here's why it's important to you. Here's how it's used in the real world, and then takeaways from it. So I had them create the skeletal notes for these 3 assignments. And then I went in and said, okay, now let's create a 30-minute class. Let's create some quiz questions. Can you make those into a format of Canvas where I can bring them right into Canvas? So I've been able to use this teaching assistant a good deal. And then here is basically when I asked my teaching assistant, The question about what can I improved on. It told me things I did well. Here's what I should improve on. As you can probably tell right now, I talk too fast. I'm going through the material. Some things that they would like help on, clarification, and then it gave me, here's some things that you can do. Chapter roadmap, and that's kind of what we call the skeletal notes. I created that based off of what my teaching assistant said. Um, Problem set. So based off of that, I actually started having a conversation with the teaching assistant, and I came up with a GPT, which is a program within Chat GPT, which was a quiz coach where come exam time, they can ask the quiz coach, generate some extra practice problems for me. And I put the material in there as their knowledge base, and we can scaffold answers on that, provide exam style hints or exam style questions. And I provided those with the GPT. So the students were able to practice those exams. That was like one of the biggest responses. Like, I wish we had more practice problems, um, things like that, so it could help me learn the material. So I've been using um, these projects, which is my teaching assistant, to help me teach the students the material in a clearer way, provide more support for them in that regard. The one thing I will note for me personally, teaching tax, um, I do it's a VITA program on campus where we help students prepare or we prepare tax returns for the students, and I deal with a lot of international students. And we had a student from India who had a tax situation, and there's a treaty with India, and it's pretty long. And I'm like, oh, how am I going to figure this out? Or I need to ask it a couple questions. So I've also been using Notebook LM, which you can upload files, and it uses that as knowledge base. And you can just start asking Notebook LM. And I had one specific question, and it found me that within those notes, that tax treaty. One big beautiful bill just passed recently, and there's a lot to that. I uploaded the law, uploaded some summaries, and I've been able to use that again, me personally, to help answer questions or bring that material to the class and updated material. So I've been using these, the Gen AI and case studies to help the students learn the material, and on the back end to try to save me some time preparing materials that the students can use.
That is really awesome. Thank you so much. Michelle, what about you? Share your experience. How are you using AI in teaching?
Oh, and I can springboard right off of what Sean is saying with Quiz Coach, and I'm going to put in a plug for some of the research too. I mean, one of the things that I do I have a newsletter for faculty, and I'm continually trying to do is synthesize empirical research that's coming out on this, particularly if it has a kind of a cognitive bent or a pedagogical bent. And I mean, my money right now, even in the very emerging stage of research on like what actually helps and what doesn't with AI and higher education teaching, the lowly chatbot, even though I think many of us revile interacting with them when we're forced to, and they always seem so, unhelpful. Actually, I mean, to the extent that we have some like controlled studies that show, hey, this is what happens when students interact with a well-designed AI tool aligned to learning principles, the chatbot really is coming out ahead. But here's the thing. I think what also, what I put into practice myself and what I also see very much kind of coming through in Sean's project here, and the other good ones out there is it's not a matter of just like, okay, go on AI and ask AI. I mean, first of all, that I will say that phrase kind of bothers me as well. Ask AI. It's like if you have a question, a simple question, ask Google. AI is good at following instructions. So anyway, that's a little thing that just gets under my skin. But yeah, I think that that's a very negative thing to say to students, well, did you ask AI to explain this to you? But when you get out ahead of it as the expert, and you set up like I set up a custom GPT as well. It's this kind of silly name. It's called MillerBot. I wasn't feeling very imaginative. It didn't like any of my other options. So my intro to psychology students now have this as an option. How is it different than just asking ChatGPT about psychology? Well, it's very specifically aligned to like I created a master study guide for the whole course It is aligned to, I have an open source textbook, so it's legit for me to put that in as well. It's got the syllabus, uh, and it's got all these aspects to it. It's even got something that I've come to like very much, and I feel very confident knowing it's in there, is I gave it very direct instructions and some backup materials to address something that comes up a lot with my students, which is, oh, I'm a visual learner, but my high school counselor said I was an auditory learner, so I can't do X, Y, and Z. And those of you who are insiders to cognitive psychology or applied educational psychology are like, that we really regard this as a myth and a pernicious one at that. And so it is also tailored to, if they kind of put that into it as they're going through, it will, gently and in an upbeat way say, actually, you're probably not locked into that, and here's some options. So what does MillerBot do? It's geared to what we call in the field retrieval practice. So go back and ask me X number of questions on this material, and then it really tries to entice them into some more substantive practice. So let's look at some applications, or how would you design a study to actually test what you just learned about? They have to voluntarily sit with it and go along. But if they do, that, acting on my behalf, it's going to draw them into uh, information that I have vetted as being accurate and appropriate to the class and the level. It's going to have a tone that's, again, upbeat and not sycophantic, but encouraging, just like mine, like I strive to. It's not going to feed into myths that they may have, and it's not going to just sort of, replicate the textbook or say, here's the answers. So those are kind of what I see as threads. Sean's projects, other really strong projects out there, they have those things in common. Mine also, since it's psychology, we also have the concern that if students are expressing despondency, or just they're overwhelmed with stress, um, that's a that's something students might just type in. And so instead of just saying, well, you should get some help for that, don't harm yourself, it sends you out to specific resources in our community with the phone number and the email here. Like, here's how you can get help right now. So all those things can be very positive, but that's, the direct interaction with AI, with students. And again, students are not forced to do this. There's really encouraged to use it as part of their study. So again, much like I think I'm hearing some themes here. I just last week put together, I mean, my students actually underperformed on their second exam. It's known to happen in intro to psych. Uh, and so I put together a resource, a workbook that would really help them target their study for the final exam. And, there too, you might just assume, oh, I went to ChatGPT, said make a workbook on psychology. Do not do that either. Um, no, this was the end product of first me gathering that feedback from students. What did you do? What worked? What didn't? What kind of support? AI was my thinking partner in pulling out those themes. Here's what they need. AI was my thinking partner, and it took many iterations to go through and say, all right, create structured study that I can put out there in a workbook. It was a lot of work on my part, but it was less kind of tedious, or felt like a better use of faculty time than me like cross-checking the page numbers in the textbook, where I was telling them, be sure you review this, or I got to come up with a multiple choice question and make sure the key at the end is accurate. Human brains are terrible at that stuff. AI can be really good at that stuff. And so the jury's out. We'll see how many students, first of all, actually complete that, because it is going to be an optional resource, and what the impact is. But that's, again, I'm not dumping students in and saying, okay, you have to go ask ChatGPT all this stuff when maybe you're not even comfortable doing that. I'm not just handing it over and saying, well, make my class for me because I'm busy. I am using that in that strategic way, and that's how I think we can really deliver on the promise when we implement it in that way. And I wanted to put in one more plug for this. So for those of you who might want to do this in one particular area, critical thinking is something that's come up, but I'm not going to editorialize just yet. But I put together a GPT for faculty as well, and I don't know whether folks are going to be interested in it or not, but It's for generating critical thinking and kind of applied higher order thinking in particular disciplines. And it's aligned, again, we're not just saying, give me critical thinking activities. It's aligned to very specific aspects of the research in this. So I've got you can actually, I've got a link to it. You can always contact me if you'd like to use that. So that maybe also smooths the way to creating materials in that way.
We will do our best to share this GPT with our participants in our key takeaways email that we're gonna send next week to all our participants. So, Michelle, we will be in touch together. I'd like to gently remind that our participants have the opportunity to ask questions in YouTube chat before I ask my, almost to my last final questions to our experts. But please feel free to send any questions in the YouTube chat. Sean, can you please share with us how you design, what kind of assignments you typically design for your students, especially because now it's easy to use AI to cheat, but it appears to me that you know what type of assessments to use in that case.
Sure. So this would be for my tax research class. It's a graduate level class where we do tax research. Can be for any assignment really. So part of, again, introducing the students to Gen AI, give them a week of here's what it is, here's how to prompt, and then in this class, because it's graduate level, some ethical things to think about when we're using AI. But I have it set up, it's basically three questions. I provide them with a tax situation that they need to research. And the way tax research, normally we have a third-party platform that they would go to do the tax research and communicate that research in various ways. So we've been using Gen AI more for that. So part of it is here's your tax situation. And then within UMass, we have a UMass generative AI platform. So I have been having them use that because it keeps everything in-house. And then it provides them with different platforms that they want to use. If they want to use chat or Google Gemini or Claude, they can use that. So the first submission that they have to do based off of this tax question is give me the prompt that you use. I want to see the prompt because I want to see if you're using good prompt techniques. And again, we've talked about that. They've had exposure to it. So I want to see, are they using what we've talked about in their prompts? Then the second thing is, what did Gen AI produce? I want to see it all because I'm curious too to see what type of material that it's producing so I can kind of get a feel for it and see what they're looking at. And based off of that, then I asked them, all right, now is the answer that the generative AI produced correct? Is it incorrect? And now you need to go into that third-party platform, the tax research, and do the research yourself and prove what the answer is, and then compare it to the Gen AI output. And it's weird because the same problem, I might get a 75-25 or 75% of the times the AI gets it correct. And another problem, and this is within the students, another problem, it may only be 50-50. It has some troubles with, like, say, again, this is getting into tax, but related party issues. Only reason I think of this is it just happened, like brother-in-law. Well, for tax purposes, a brother-in-law is not considered a related party, but for like most people in real life, you would consider your brother-in-law to be related to you. So there are certain things it just doesn't understand yet. So having them research that output, I think is a good way to critically evaluate what it's producing. And then finally, I guess there's four questions like, what's your thoughts on this? Like, do you like using it? And it's a mixed bag right now. Some of the students like, this is great. It gives me a starting point. It kind of tells me where I need to start my research in that third party platform. Other students like, I'm not relying on this. I feel like the answer that it gives me is not correct and it's a waste of my time. I'm going to go right to that third party platform and do the research there. So at least they're getting to see the output. They're getting to work with it, try to prompt it properly. And some of it is, hey, your prompts weren't that great. This is why your output wasn't that great. And I'll show them some other students' prompts and say, here was an output based off of what I consider a good prompt. So kind of getting a feel for the output and then, like I said, critically evaluating that and then their thoughts on the assignment.
Amazing. That sounds really great. Kemi, it looks like you want to add something.
Well, I was just going to add, last week I was at a learning conference and a lot of talk about AI, and someone was describing all the different prompt tools, all the different AI tools out there, right? And you just mentioned them, Sean. There's Gemini, there's ChatGPT, there's Claude. He said, think of them all like they went to a different university. And they're all going to come back with different answers, right? And we could all probably use ChatGPT and ask the exact same question, and we would all get different answers back. And it's just reminding people as part of that process that, AI will have different answers. Same person asking the same question of the same tool will get a different answer. But then all these other prompt tools can come back with totally different insights. So, yeah, think about the university metaphor there. I thought that was good.
Thank you. Sean, we have a question from the audience. How time intensive do you find reviewing the prompt logs you get from students? That's the question number one. And the second question, do you have issues with students not submitting logs, etc.? What are your recommendations about that?
For the most part, the students do submit their prompt. It's part of the assignment. So I haven't had any issues with them not submitting their prompt. I find that overall, and luckily this is kind of a specialty class. It's not I might have 18 to 20 students. So reviewing the prompts, I don't find it super time consuming for the assignment. It's you kind of look, you need to know, okay, here's the context, here's the problem, here's what we're looking for. Provide me with primary source. I kind of know going in what I'm looking for on these prompts. So overall, I haven't found it to be overly time consuming to get through the assignments. So
Thank you. Well, we have the last question. I'd like to ask Kirsten. It's more about the values. Kirsten, how can we move from fear or skepticism toward confident, values-driven use of AI tools from your perspective and your observations?
Flava, you led into the question with values, and that's actually my answer, right? That we need to think about our own values and like what is really at the heart of what we hold dear when we think about teaching and learning. And then to think about which of these values do we feel are most threatened by AI and which ones do we feel can be enhanced by AI. And we actually just had a colleague of mine in the office and we presented at an AI conference. And astonishingly, when we posed this question to the participants, a lot of them realized that many of their most important values are both threatened and can also be enhanced. So it goes back to we very early in this session, we talked about the both and, right? So I thought that was really interesting. And then second, to also, again, bring in the students, right? So what are their values? What do they value in their education? What do they hope that they will get out of their education or out of a specific course? And really also center that. And then the third one is disciplinary values, right? That differs too. In some fields, I think being able to use AI effectively and like knowing also about different platforms and which ones are the right ones or the better ones for certain tasks will be a very valuable skill, right? Whereas maybe in other fields, that is not as valuable. And so to really think about that. And then with the confidence piece, it goes back to what I said initially, that we all need to experiment, right? Regardless of whether we are educators or whether we are students, we need to experiment. And as educators, we kind of have like an additional burden. So like we are learning as the plane is flying, and at the same time, we have to figure out how to support our students when we are not even quite sure, how everything works. But so we need to think in terms of how can we scaffold this AI integrated learning for our students? How can we guide them? How can we get engage in conversations with them? And I think slowly then build that confidence and maybe most importantly, be okay with sometimes failing, right? Like when you're doing this work on the flying plane that's being built, there's gonna be moments when we're like, oh, well, this actually didn't work out, right? This was a failure, or you realize for certain things AI is actually not useful. So not just in terms of accuracy, but actually usefulness. And I just want to very briefly share. So one experience I've had with AI is that it can easily lead you down rabbit holes. So instead of actually making your work more efficient and saving you time, you get pulled in because AI will just keep asking you, well, do you want me to do this now? Or how about you consider that, right? And so you go into this rabbit burrow, right? And it gets more extensive and extensive, and then you can get lost in it. And that's an important experience too, I think. And maybe our students sometimes they also need that experience, right? And so we slowly build our confidence. And the last one, I think, it's not just our professional development, but that we take time to like reflect and document our experiences. Like this is an area where still there's very little research really out there so far about pedagogy in the age of AI, right? So we need to document that. We need to do research. We need to talk about this. And I think then slowly we can build confidence.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I actually want to share one great resource with our seminar participants where they can start picking some ideas on how to effectively use AI in their work. We at Ideas Group at UMass Amherst introduced the EdTech Ideas Digest, the special edition that was launched this fall. And we have a few articles on AI and how to boost course design and efficiency there, how to create sharp and effective learning objectives with AI. We are not telling just to simply use AI and rely on that, but we want to, the idea how we provided how we explained this in the article, AI is your first tool. You start working with this tool, and then once you receive replies from AI, you need to work with this content. You need to do some fact checking. You will need to apply some changes, and we provide a few resources, a few services that instructors may want to use to practice. As Kirsten mentioned earlier, during this seminar, that we as faculty have to practice, and we decided that it's important to show what different services exist and where exactly you can use them. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, before we close our seminar, we like your feedback. And if you can tell us how useful did you find the information presented during today's seminar, that will be great, especially if you can tell us what needs to be improved. We always read all your comments, and we're trying to implement your feedback in the future instances. So if you can take some moment and either scan the QR code or follow the link in the chat, that will be really great and really appreciated. And we'll see you next time. Our next seminar is going to be facilitated in February of next year. We're going to take some break, and we'll see you later. Thank you so much.